So have any of you guys seen the clip from the podcast about with Christine Brennan?
The WNBA thought they could quiet their most vocal critic, but they clearly chose the wrong battle. When a respected veteran journalist made the bold move to write a tell-all book, exposing the truth behind Caitlin Clark's meteoric rise, the league went into damage control. Now, with eye-opening revelations about questionable officiating and internal chaos set to be published, everything could be turned on its head. What's your take? Should journalists really be punished for asking the hard questions?
This book is going to be crazy. I mean this when I say this. This book is going to be absolute.
Well. The WNBA really walked straight into this one, didn't they? Enter Christine Brennan. And let's be absolutely clear about who we're dealing with here. This isn't some anonymous blogger with a chip on her shoulder. We're talking about arguably the most respected and influential women's sports journalist of all time. She's covered 21 Olympic Games, has been named one of America's top 10 sports columnists more than once, and broke barriers as the first woman to cover major sports beats that had long been dominated by men. And what did the WNBA Players Association choose to do in response? They attempted to get her press credentials revoked, all because she dared to ask uncomfortable questions. The sheer nerve of it is staggering, and honestly, it says everything you need to know about how the league behaves when it thinks no one is paying attention. But here's where it gets even more interesting. They clearly underestimated Brennan. She's not just writing columns anymore. She's been working on something much bigger. On July 8th, her explosive new book asterisk on her game, Caitlin Clark and the Revolution in Women's Sports asterisk, is set to hit the shelves, and from what we're hearing, this won't be some sanitized, feel-good celebrity story. This is shaping up to be a full-blown expose. Even the book's description should be enough to send chills down the league's spine. Brennan is set to reveal compelling new details about Clark's exclusion from the Olympic roster, the security threats that led to the implementation of charter flights for all players, the league's failure to handle the sudden wave of national attention, and the internal backlash, including jealousy and resentment triggered by a white player, becoming the face of a predominantly black league.
So Christine Brennan is, and the WNBA tried to get Christine Brennan banned. And I mean this when I say this, like, whatever your opinion on Christine Brennan is, it is not a positive thing if you are trying to get rid of.
Oh, so now we're really getting somewhere, aren't we? The WNBA has complete lack of preparation for heightened national attention. Translation: they had no clue how to deal with suddenly being in the national spotlight, and they fumbled the moment badly. But wait, it gets even juicier. Troubling outbreaks of jealousy and resentment. That's not speculation, and it's not some random hot take. That's straight from a veteran journalist who's been watching everything unfold from the inside. With a front row seat, now let's rewind and look at what actually kicked off this entire storm, because the timeline matters a lot. It all began during the playoffs, when Connecticut's on guard Duana Carrington accidentally poked Caitlin Clark in the eye during a game.
Probably the most impactful women's sports reporter in the history of women's sports. Like, there's not one reporter who has, even if you don't like Christine Brennan, even if you don't like some of the things, they cannot.
Clark ended up with a visible black eye, and naturally, the conversation online exploded. Was it really an accident, or was there something more behind it? That's when things started to get interesting. Christine Brennan, doing exactly what seasoned journalists are supposed to do, went straight to the source. She asked Carrington directly, "When you went to swat at Caitlin, did you mean to hit her in the eye?" Carrington responded, "No, it was accidental. I was going for the ball." Fair enough. But Brennan didn't stop there. She followed up with a sharper question, one that clearly touched a nerve. She asked if Carrington and her teammates had laughed about the incident later in the game.
Cannot come for Christine Brennan. Like, it is a bad look. It is a bad look. It's like going for a freaking, if you're a critic, it's like, imagine if, I don't know, Bill Russell said some, rest in peace, Bill Russell. But imagine hypothetically if Bill Russell was alive and Bill Russell said something.
And that's when everything blew up. The WNBA Players Association completely lost it. They fired off what can only be described as a hit piece disguised as an official statement, labeling Christine Brennan as unprofessional and indecent. and calling for her press credentials to be revoked. They accuse her of bias and having ulterior motives, which is almost laughable, considering that every season sports journalist develops perspectives and relationships over time. That's how journalism works, Dot. But here's the truly absurd part. They were outraged that Brennan is writing a book about Caitlin Clark, as if that's some kind of ethical violation. Do people realize how many books have been written about Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or Tom Brady, often while they were still playing? It's standard practice. This is what respected journalists do when they cover major cultural and athletic figures. But suddenly, when it's about Caitlin Clark, it becomes a problem. The union's response was so aggressive and over the top that even journalists who don't usually align with Brennan felt compelled to speak up in her defense. Because what the Players Association was really pushing, whether they meant to admit it or not, that's the idea that asking tough, direct questions should be off limits if they might make a player uncomfortable. That's not how professional sports media works. Not in the NFL, not in the NBA, not in MLB. Think about it. In any other major league, if a player is involved in a controversial moment, reporters will ask them about it. That's literally the job. But in the WNBA, apparently asking a follow-up question about whether players laugh during a game is grounds for being banned from covering the league. The hypocrisy is unreal. These are the same voices constantly arguing that women's sports deserve equal respect, equal attention, and equal coverage, and yet the moment a journalist actually treats them with that same level of scrutiny, they try to shut it down. Let's call it what it is. This isn't about protecting DeJohnai Carrington from uncomfortable questions. This is about controlling the narrative around Caitlin Clark because she's become too big, too valuable, and too central to the league's marketing strategy for them to tolerate any coverage that might complicate the image they've worked so hard to craft.
Video shows where people would laugh about the WNBA and women's college basketball. They roll around on the floor. It's ridiculous. The WNBA had never had an Arnie Jack moment, had never had, Havlicek, Celtics.
The numbers don't lie. During Caitlin Clark's rookie season, when BATV viewership surged by over 400% in certain markets, attendance at Indiana Fever games exploded. Merchandise sales soared. Clark single-handedly brought more attention to women's basketball than the league had seen in its entire 27-year history. But instead of embracing that success, instead of showing appreciation for the unprecedented spotlight she brought, what did we get? Jealousy, resentment, snide remarks from players and coaches about Clark receiving too much attention, veteran players grumbling that she was being treated differently, and then came the Olympic snub, a decision so blatantly political and petty that even casual fans could see right through it. And through all of this, Christine Brennan was there, documenting the entire saga. She wasn't just reporting, she was connecting the dots in real time. Now, here's where things really start to get interesting. We're not just talking about one awkward moment or one snub. We're seeing a disturbing pattern, a series of questionable officiating decisions that go far beyond any single controversial play.
Bill Russell, moment, Lakers, Kareem moment. Well, so when we talk about these understandable connections, that's where it breaks down. Because when you're looking at the WNBA, the interest was so low.
This past week, we saw yet another incident, this time during a game against the Connecticut Sun. Clark took another shot to the face, courtesy of J.C. Sheldon, while she was swiping at the ball. But what really turned heads was what happened next. Marina Mabrey from the Sun blatantly shoved Clark to the floor in what was clearly a cheap shot. And what did the referees do? Absolutely nothing. Mabrey stayed in the game without even a warning. Incredibly, it was Clark who got hit with a technical foul, supposedly for flopping, even though the replay clearly showed her being shoved down. Christine Brennan wasn't having it. She took to Twitter and called the league out, writing, "The WNBA continues to fail to meet the moment. Terrible decision to allow Marina Mabrey to stay in the game. People are watching as never before, and this is what they see."
So low. And then one person brings it up so high. And that's why, again, I wanted to focus on this story and look at the magnitude.
What they see, and she's absolutely right. Caitlin Clark is responsible for drawing more than half of the WNBA's total TV audience. So when casual fans finally tune in to see what all the hype is about, and they witness the league's Biggest start getting shoved around with zero accountability from the officials. What kind of message does that send? But it's not just Christine Brennan sounding the alarm anymore. Tennis legend Chris Evert-Waden posting, when will these ladies realize, accept, and appreciate that Caitlin Clark is the best thing that's ever happened to women's basketball? This is a bad look for the sport. And what happened to sportsmanship? Even Clark's own coach, Stephanie White, couldn't stay silent after the game. She called out the officiating crew for failing to provide any explanation as to why Clark was hit with a technical foul. Despite being the one shoved to the floor dot at this point, the pattern is becoming impossible to ignore.
Magnitude of this one person at this one time. We're almost at the 53rd anniversary of Title IX. I tie that all in, no mistake at all. The nation has fallen in love.
Impossible to ignore. That's what it's become. Clark consistently takes more physical punishment than most players in the league. And time again, the officials fail to step in and protect her the way they should. Whether that's due to plain incompetence, unconscious bias, or something more deliberate. We might not get the full picture until Brennan's book drops. And that's exactly what has the WNBA so rattled. Brennan has been covering the story from the beginning, with unprecedented access. She's conducted dozens of exclusive interviews. She's been behind the scenes, gathering every detail, every whisper, every overlooked moment, and most importantly, Clark has been fully cooperating, answering every question Brennan has thrown her way. The book's description alone is enough to put the league on edge. It promises never-before-seen insights into how the WNBA failed to handle the moment, how safety concerns around Clark became so serious that the league had to approve charter flights for all players.
If you take off your capes for just a second and look at this objectively from this viewpoint right here, you'll see that there's no way Dejanay Carrington intentionally poked that
players. Wait, what safety concerns? What kind of situation in a professional sports league warrants full charter flights? Just to keep one player safe? That's not something you hear every day. And it certainly raises red flags if things escalated to that level. It speaks volumes about the environment Clark has been operating in and about the league's failure to manage it. Then there's that line from the book preview about the WNBA's lack of preparation for heightened national scrutiny. That alone is damning. It suggests the league knew it was about to face intense attention because of Clark, and still managed to mishandle it at nearly every turn. And let's not forget the Olympic snub, arguably one of the biggest missteps of all, leaving off the all-time leading scorer in NCAA basketball history. During the peak of her popularity from Team USA, it was so egregious that even mainstream outlets, ones that usually play it safe, labeled it one of the worst sports decisions of the year. Christine Brennan didn't hold back either. She called it one of the worst decisions I've seen in 40 years of.
Poke that girl in the eye. But anytime something happens to Caitlin Clark, Jason Whitlock and the rest of the White Knights want to press charges against the jealous black Shaniquas.
Brennan isn't just some casual commentator lobbing opinions from the sidelines. She's covered 21 Olympic Games. That's the full decades of first-hand experience, watching the world's biggest sporting moments unfold. So when someone with that level of credibility says the Olympic snub was historically bad, you don't brush it off. You pay attention. But that snub didn't happen in isolation. It was the clearest example of a broader effort by the basketball establishment to downplay Clark's influence, to remind her in subtle and not so subtle ways that she hadn't earned her place yet. And fans saw it unfold in real time all season long. The constant physical abuse that went unchecked by officials. The media coverage that fixated more on the behavior of Clark's fan base than on her record-breaking performances, the passive-aggressive. Comments from veteran players suggesting the league was doing just fine before she arrived. The veiled frustration any time her name came up in PRESSCRS dot and through it all. Christine Brennan was documenting every move, watching, questioning, writing. That's why the WNBA's attempt to silence her.
Dejanay, did you, when you went and kind of swatted at Caitlin, did you intend to hit her in the eye? And if so, could you just, or if not, either way, could you talk about what happened on that play?
Brennan's credentials revoked was always a losing battle, but more importantly, it exposed something far deeper about how the WNBA operates under pressure. When faced with valid, uncomfortable criticism, their first instinct isn't to reflect or respond constructively. It's to go after the person raising the concern. That's not how confident, well-run organizations behave. That's how fragile institutions act when they know there are cracks they can't patch in truths. They can't afford to have exposed, but now it's too late. The book is coming out in just 3 weeks, and there's nothing the league can do to stop it. In fact, every attempt they've made to discredit Brennan has only amplified interest in what she's uncovered. The Streisand effect in full swing, and the timing couldn't be more disastrous for the WNBA. Clark is stepping into her second season with even more media attention.
I don't even know why I would intend to hit anybody in the eye. That doesn't even make sense to me. But no, I didn't. I didn't know I hit her, actually. I was trying to make a play on the ball, and I guess I followed through and I hit her. So obviously it's never intentional. That's not even like the type of player that I am. Yeah.
And yet, here we are, with the spotlight squarely on her as the league rides a wave of a lucrative new media rights deal, with more games than ever hitting national TV screens. Corporate sponsors are pouring millions into the league, largely based on the momentum she created. Clark didn't just boost interest. She redefined what was possible for women's basketball. And in the middle of this historic rise, we're now on the verge of seeing a bombshell book drop. That could expose how close the WNBA came to blowing it all because of petty jealousy, short-sighted leadership, and infighting that prioritized ego over progress. What makes it all the more damning is that none of this was inevitable. This wasn't some unavoidable clash. It was the result of bad decisions, poor leadership, and an inability to embrace the very change that was elevating the league to new heights.
So yeah.
Did you and Marina kind of laugh about it afterwards? It looked like there was later on in the game they caught you guys laughing about it.
No, I just told you I didn't even know I hit her, so I can't laugh about something I didn't know happened.
With the increase she's been saying, and amplify the spotlight on what she's about to reveal. Caitlin Clark came into the league with humility. She deflected praise, uplifted her teammates, and responded to criticism with a level of maturity far beyond her 22 years. The WNBA had a golden opportunity to embrace her, protect her, and use her once-in-a-generation popularity to elevate the entire sport. Instead, they let egos, grudges, and insecurities dictate the tone. Pettiness took precedence over progress. Resentment replaced recognition, and now Christine Brennan is about to expose exactly how and why it all spiraled out of control. The WNBA tried to manage the narrative by pressuring media outlets, by intimidating reporters, by going after anyone who dared to ask uncomfortable questions. But in doing so, they made a critical error. They went after the wrong journalist. Brennan isn't new to this. She's been championing women's sports since long before many of today's players were even born. She's broken down doors, shifted public opinion, and built her reputation by reporting inconvenient, necessary truths. The notion that a few angry tweets and a heavy-handed statement from the players' union could silence her, it's laughable. If anything, their attacks on Brennan have only confirmed her credibility and proven her point.
Once Steph and LeBron retire, will there be an active American athlete that's more famous than her?
No.
I think she will be more famous than every baseball player she might already be. Every hockey player, all of the U.S. men's national team, and every football player that isn't really Patrick Mahomes and maybe Lamar, Josh. Like, there's only a few.
She's been reporting every step of the way. And let's be honest, if the WNBA had nothing to hide, why would they go to such desperate lengths to shut her down? Christine Brennan's book drops on July 8th. And by all indications, it's going to be explosive. We're talking detail, first-hand accounts of behind-the-scenes drama, documented examples of questionable officiating, and insider reporting on the political games that led to some of the most controversial decisions in recent league history. And this isn't just about Caitlin Clark. It's about an entire league that was completely unprepared for the kind of success Clark brought, and then made mistake after mistake trying to navigate it. From jealousy in the locker rooms, to silence from leadership, to outright hostility toward journalists. This is the story of how a league on the verge of greatness nearly imploded. Under the weight of its own dysfunction, the WNBA tried to silence Christine Brennan, but in doing so, they gave her the biggest megaphone she's ever had. Now, every sports fan in America wants to read this book just to understand what all the controversy is about. And when they do, they're going to get a raw, unfiltered look at how petty politics and mismanagement can derail something truly special. The league tried to shoot the messenger, but the message is coming out anyway. and it's going to change everything. This book is set to expose all of it. The biased officiating, the resentment from fellow players, and the baffling Olympic snub that made no sense to anyone with eyes. July 8th can't come soon enough, dog. What are you most eager to learn from the book? Drop your thoughts below. Smash that like button and subscribe for more unfiltered sports coverage you won't hear from the mainstream media.
And I think she's already more famous than every NBA player but KD, Steph, and LeBron. And I don't see any of those guys catching her. I think she is a supernova of fame and talent.
She's the Tiger 20 years ago on the tour. Like, the ratings disappear. It's nothing against the WNBA. She literally is changing the entire league economy.